Zwelinzima Vavi, when people have asked you about going into governance, you've said things like, I'm not going to abandon my post for personal glory. I want to put to you that there might be something else here. That in many ways being in opposition, and therefore in many ways always being right, is a more comfortable position than having, for example, to be Minister of Economic Development, where you've got to grapple with the realities of an untransformed capitalist economy trying to deliver systems of economic justice. Do you accept that to some degree, that if you'd become a minister, it might have been the hardest thing you'd ever done?
But I will not have the credibility I have now.
Yes.
Definitely. You know why I rejected the different times of approach to get me to go to the National Executive Committee of the ANC, the party central committee, and or even cabinet positions, is because I wanted to fight against the trend. The trend was that workers were losing hope on COSATU because it was being presented as an institution that leaders use to ascend to better positions in parliament and into cabinet. And I had felt that we must actively fight against that perception deepening and becoming a reality. I think that yes, it did become a reality. If you look at the growth of COSATU, it grew so fast between 1994 and reached its steep point in 2007. And from 2007, it has been a free fall. And the main reason why that happened is because workers just perceive it to be an institution that have abandoned them for a political cozy office in parliament and for BMWs and big Mercedes-Benz and three-story houses everywhere. We have to fight against that. And a lot of people respect me for standing firm and to say, I'll want to serve the workers because I believe that this is the best thing that anybody could do, spending his or her life serving the most marginalized in society, using the advantages that I have accumulated over a period yes, to advance their interest. So it was not about cowardice and of not wanting to dirty the hands or not going to go to parliament to serve. No, maybe that time will come in the future. But for now, with the current status of what we are trying to deal with, we need the best brains, the best energies to serve workers.
Would you accept, though, that in many ways your job is much simpler than the job, for instance, of your former COSATU colleague Ibrahim Patel, who, as Minister of Economic Development, but a man committed to radical change in the economy, he's got to balance things in a complex way that you never have to?
Absolutely. That's correct. But for him, it was absolutely even worse.
Yes.
And this is where, and in fact, we lost Zuma and the presidency, which we regarded as representing political uncertainty, economic policy uncertainty, zigzags that were seeking to serve the workers at night yes, and the capitalists during the day. In my view, the ANC have long been hijacked by the black middle class and by the aspirant capitalist class in society, and the workers now are an appendage only to serve only as a voting cattle in times of elections, and they play no other role except that. The alliance is a farce. It doesn't work in reality. The leaders of COSATU SACP know that they are not driving the transformation. There's only one campaign that they can ever participate in, and that is a campaign to ensure that the ANC is returned to the government with even larger supporters. And that's all they do. It's not a vehicle yes, for transformation. So the likes that we send there and the discussions we're having with them all the time show us that, look, maybe, and that's why I've come to the conclusion myself, the time to unite the left and to create a workers' party that will serve the working class in a broader sense and broad labor front of organizations that are capable of winning election, maybe is the only way to go now.
Mr. Vavi, there's a big battle on the go at the moment for who is the custodian of the idea of radical economic transformation, whatever you call it. Does that create opportunity because it puts it quite high up the political agenda, or does it create confusion where anybody can come along and say, we are committed to land expropriation without compensation, we're committed to nationalization without necessarily having any track record of that? What's the balance between the opportunity and the chaos?
There have been some confusion, and the confusion have been created by the Zuma project.
Yes.
Because in public, they had a platform more than we could to continue to talk about radical economic transformation. In fact, the people who support President Zuma even now say that he is the father of radical economic transformation. Can you believe it? And so it's getting discredited. And so if you look at my tweet this morning, I was decrying the fact that he have received over R1 million worth of cows from another thief, clearly from the Northwest. And people say, that's your radical economic transformation. They say this in a sarcastic way, obviously. Yes. You have discredited the concept, but it doesn't mean that it is a wrong concept or wrong ideal. I think it's an ideal that we should be pushing. The reality, and let me go back to this point, John. The reality, 24 years of democracy in South Africa has meant that those who were the beneficiaries of the past remain largely, not all, largely the face of beneficiaries of the post-1994 era. And that's, to us, a massive scandal that must be reversed.
You say President Jacob Zuma is being presented as the father of radical economic transformation.
That's an insult.
Can you believe that? But
it's an insult.
Somebody might say, can you believe that? You believe that. And here's my question to you. As you sat down,
can you believe it?
As you sat down with President Jacob Zuma in the times either side of the Polokwane conference, did he ever share with you ideas about economic transformation? Did he ever say, why don't we try this? Why don't we explore that? This is a great idea that's been tried in Venezuela or somewhere else. Let's look at it here. Was he a man who engaged actively with you around those kinds of ideas?
We did.
Yes.
I mean, we did.
Did he have ideas of his own?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
For example, I knew that he has such a passion about education, that education transformation is what have lagged behind, and that rural poverty and unemployment of our people is what is a setback of our democratic breakthrough. And he was passionate in the discussion, and I honestly believed that that's what his presidency will be about.
Yes.
I was wrong, because one thing I didn't know about him was that when he speaks to me at night in his house, he will say something opposite to what he says to me at night to someone else.
Yes.
He's a man who must be everything to everybody, which is impossible. He doesn't know that in society you have to stand for certain ideas, and you must accept that some people are going to hate you like poison for standing for those ideas, and others will appreciate that you stand for A, B, C, D, and that you are consistent, you are predictable, and that you are never doubted where you stand and how you will respond against any particular issue in society. I think President Zuma lacked the other part. He doesn't appreciate that you have to choose a side in society, and you have to make yourself unpopular because that's what you represent.
Mr. Vavi, you've been accused of many things, and you've had some specific scandals, a sex scandal earlier in a couple of years back. People have made allegations against you of being corrupt. What have you learned from those things?
If you do something in dark corners, be assured that it will one day come into the open. The sex scandal was the lowest point in my political life, because it just opened myself up to my political enemies, who took the full advantage of it. And they have been raving off it until this moment. And I don't want to say, what about you, what about the people who wanted to support, because I said that I want to establish good moral standards myself. I've accepted that this was a blunder of unbelievable proportions, and that's why I humbled myself at home to my wife and to the rest of the family, and eventually to the political cycles. And many people have moved on, and they regard that as a scandal of the past, as long as I don't repeat the same mistake again. Secondly, they use the very area where I'm regarded as strong at, the issue of fighting corruption. And by accusing me of corruption, buildings, the equipment that we were buying, and they even tried to say that my wife was a beneficiary in all of that. And they took me to two forensic audits that were running parallel. They couldn't find evidence to back the headlines that they put up against me throughout 2012 up to 2014.
Many people, Mr. Vavi, say the personal is also political. You spoke about an aspirant capitalist class. That could be a decent description of your wife, Noluthando, who is an aspirant business person. How do you resolve those contradictions at home? Because your critics might say that makes you a socialist by day, but at home you have business growing and booming that would put your wife in a position one day where you might have to nationalize her assets.
Unfortunately, my wife is a typical example of a black woman trying to make into business, battling in a world of white men up to this moment. She doesn't possess all manner of beauties that others are boasting about. She cannot afford to take me to the best destinations of holidays. She's a battling small business person who's trying to do trucking business. And that's what she has been trying to do for the past 10 years. It does bring about contradictions. There's no doubt about it. Whenever you employ a truck driver, the contradictions start. Whenever you employ a cleaner, the contradictions start. And I know this from a practical experience. I have had to represent those workers at home at times to say, no, 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 no.
Yes, who wins the arguments?
I always win.
Okay.
Maybe that's why a business is not taking off. I don't know.
Mr. Vavi, I always finish by offering my guests 3 wishes. What's your wish for the trade union movement?
Unity, growth, relevance, taking up issues of workers in the workplace and society, and changing the lives of workers. That's my first wish.
What's your wish for the country?
Growth of the economy in a manner that gives prosperity for everybody, to see redistribution of wealth from the rich to the poor.
What's your wish for yourself?
Continue to serve with honesty the people of this country until I go to my grave.
Thank you very much for joining us on Under the Skin.
Thank you very much.